shine this light. Ultimately, it shines for us. So therefore, when is it needed to be shining? It's needed to shine when you have a Jew who's very, very distant, right? And he would never be able to tap into his inner essence if it wasn't that this light shined him up. And therefore Hashem elicits this light. And so when the light realizes its own purpose, right? That's when something has an aliyah, so to speak. It realizes that it's only there for the sake of the Jewish people. So the Jewish people themselves are the cause of the or to realize its own purpose, right? And then we got through saying that which Jew really is responsible for triggering the or to have this realization of purpose. It's not the righteous Jew, right? Because the righteous Jew would not actually call upon this mercy to come out for him because his Yiddish Neshama is already doing okay. So it doesn't elicit the Yud Mitzvah Achmed. Even if you want to say he's sort of not the perfect Jew, but he's doing okay, still he doesn't require the full measure of Hashem's Rachman. The whole Ein Sof is not needed to remind him that he has this tail inside of him. So it's literally the Jew in the desert, the most pushed away farthest Jew from the field, that elicits this mercy, and therefore it's those Jews, even the most distant Jew, who makes the Ein Sof realize its own purpose. And in doing so, the Yud Gimel Mitzvah have an aliyah when they come out. You mentioned this other point that we dabbled into, which is not exactly in the minor, but it's similar, which is that what makes the lights in general want to go into vessels, irregardless of this conversation. We see there's a whole basic concept that the lights come in and they go into the vessels. You sure you can adjourn us?
Yeah.
We started. Right? So, and then we started to explain that inside the vessels, we brought this up in the last class, right? Inside the vessels, there is also God, right? What's the difference between lights and vessels? They're both entities, as it were, that come out of God to reveal God. There's a very big difference between them. The light which comes out in a way of devekis, we said, which means it's always clinging and still attached to its source. And in doing so, it's therefore revealing its source. And its whole job is to bring light and revelation. In other words, it shows you God. Whereas the vessels, why is Hashem distributing these vessels and making these entities come out, which is going to be the entities of creation, etc.? They're also to show you God, except when they come out, they actually show you the opposite of God. They show you something that exists independently. That's all idea of creating something Yeshiva. So he said, but nonetheless, they're also coming from the essence, and even more so they're coming from the essence. Why do the vessels reflect the essence strangely, even more than the light? Even when the vessels come out, they come out in a way where they're not showing an obvious connection to Hashem. On the contrary, they show a disconnect to Hashem, but they make it appear as though something is there independent. Whereas the light doesn't make something appear independent. The whole point of the light is that it's clinging and glued to Hashem. Everywhere it goes, it's revealing to you its source. Everywhere a vessel goes, it's concealing its source because it's saying, I got here by myself, right? There's no line like pinning me and gluing me to my source, making me a revelation of my source. And yet, the vessels also come from the essence. How does that make sense? How do the vessels come from the essence? Tzimtzum is an answer as to why they seem disconnected, right? But what in them shows that they actually also have a source from the essence, even though they're disconnected. And if you want to tell me what's the proof that the light is connected to the essence, it's glued to it, right? It's flying out of it. It's beaming from the essence, telling you there's an essence and I'm its representative. The Kli, because of its tzimtzum, is disconnected from any association with the essence visibly, and it's sitting there independent, what we call yesh mi'ayin. And yet what we're saying is that also it comes from the essence. It's just Hashem has this interesting way of creating the vessels from the essence in such a way that they don't show an obvious connection. So what is unique about them that the essence is found in them? Anybody? Understand the question though, right?
Does that have to do with Yud Gimel Harach?
Not particularly. We're going to get to that in just 1 second. The idea is that in order to create something from nothing, right, only the essence can do that. In other words, the very fact that something can appear as though it appears independently from God. Nothing else in the world can create something that has its own independent creation. So its very downfall, as it were, where it looks independent and it experiences itself as something other than God, only the essence of God has the power to create something which looks independent from itself. In other words, let's just counter that to something else. If you're talking about the light, right, which is not the essence, anything light is going to produce, any light that comes from light is also going to be clinging to the light and showing you its source and where it comes from. It will never look and feel independent. Light on its own doesn't have the ability to make something that seems like it's completely independent, right? It's always going to be a cause of a cause of a cause of a cause that you can trace back. So that ability to actually hatch something totally independent of God, even though it's kind of like concealing God in that very moment, because it looks like there's something else, at the same time it's revealing God. It's actually the greatest revelation of God, because the very fact that thing is sitting there existing, it shows you that there's a power of the essence that can create something yesh b'ayin, something beyond the light. But the power of the essence inside of that concealed thing is obviously very hidden in there, because in the outward look of it, it looks like something other, right? It looks totally disconnected and independent. So you have here a kind of a combination of two things: a koach of the atzmus, which is inside of this vessel, because only the atzmus can make such a vessel. So there's a proof is there must be atzmus in this vessel, otherwise how did it get there? At the same time, the vessel looks totally independent from God, and it looks like it's anything but God. So therefore, you can see that it has something that the light doesn't have. Because the light does not have this experience of being independent, which shows you that the full power of the essence has not been placed into it. Because the full power of the essence is placed into it means like the essence is showing off what it can really do. It would make something which is beyond light. It would make vessel. So the light actually recognizes that the vessels have something inside of them which is essence light, which they don't have. And that's what makes the light, so to speak, agree to go down to the vessels. Because in theory, we asked the question last time, why would lights go down? Their whole purpose is to cling to God, to be, if it was up to them, they would just be in a state of non-being, tucked inside of Hashem's essence and never come out. Their whole job is to be devekis to the essence. What makes them fly away from the essence and shine is because they're shining to these vessels where they experience that the vessel has the essence inside of them, and therefore they want the essence, in other words, just like their nature. They want to cling to essence, and they experience that they realize that the essence is inside of those vessels. So they're running to the essence which is inside those vessels. Comes now back to our mind. The Jew who's in the desert is like the Kli, right? The truth is that he has the essence of Hashem inside of him. It's just that it's very, very hidden. So these infinite lights, their job is to reveal the essence, just like they reveal it on the top side, coming out of God's essence. They can reveal it on the, so to speak, bottom side, where the essence is vested into these distant Jews, where every Jew has a inside of him. And therefore they agree, so to speak, to go down and light up this Jew, because that's their job, is to reveal the essence. But upon doing so, they also realize their purpose. Why do they shine? If they wanted to just reveal the essence, they could have just been inside the essence. They'd have to, right, and never come out. Their job is to be in a state of revelation of the essence. The fact they're going to come out of the essence is only because they found the essence somewhere else outside of them, and therefore they have a purpose of revealing the essence over there. So therefore, their very exiting, their very coming out, is only due to the Jewish people, right? To the essence which is found inside the Jewish people. Otherwise, they'd never come into existence. And therefore, they have an aliyah, so to speak, by coming down, because they get to be useful and function as revelation of God when they come and bring that revelation to the Yid inside of the Jews. It's a complicated topic to jump into, and I see that everybody's basically completely tuned out. So, David, maybe you have your hand up.
Yeah, because basically so it's like, okay, so you have like essence and light. The whole thing is it shines, and so you don't have the idea is that you don't have that Kli that appears to have the absence of the essence, but where the light can exist, there's no,
it won't come out.
Shine. Yeah,
there's no reason for it to shine.
Yeah, it's more reason for being is only like validated by the fact there's a place for it to go.
That's right.
So that's how.
Right.
That kind of kind of foggy earlier. That's kind of.
That's the Indian, and it's not going to go down because the light doesn't have any business going down. Light's job is to reveal the essence of God, especially this light, 13 attributes of mercy. So it's only going to find itself in such a place where it can be productively revealing the essence of God. The fact that it's definitely going down. The king is going into the field. He's leaving like the divine realms to go find the Jews like sin. It's only because that's not called going down. Yes, it's like leaving the essence, only to find the essence somewhere else and reveal it. And therefore, it's the Jew who's outside, so to speak, in this state of vessel, is the reason why the light shines in the first place, right? And so therefore, the light gets its purpose for being from finding this Jew in the desert, right? And therefore, the light itself has an aliyah. This is the idea of the Ani Ladodi actually creates a bump up in the level of the Orient Sof, which is the Vidodi. So that's what we said last time. That was the review from last week's class. And that's what we're saying. Yeah.
Repeat the last statement.
Yeah. We're saying that this Ani Ladodi, which is effectively the fact that you have God inside of you, that your Ani is really pure essence of Hashem. This is what creates, in a certain sense, the Vidodi to have an aliyah, that there's the Vidodi is that the Orient Sof shines to you, right? Why is it shining to you? Because it's coming after the essence which is inside of you. This Yisrael, which we spoke about, which is this level of kale inside of a Yid, this is what is hidden, and in order to bring it to light, it requires a revelation of the Orient Sof. That's what the Orient Sof is there for, to reveal the essence. I'm saying what makes the lights come out in the first place, right?
The fact that we're essentially
exactly that we kind of actually you're right. In this capacity, what we're saying is that the lights actually come out first in order to make us realize the Dogi, right? And he's going to get to that actually in this chapter. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, maybe a statement / question, but so it's I understand the philosophical application within what we're talking about, or Ein Sof, finding the vessel, but its job is to find the vessel and to light it up.
Right.
But why isn't it the job then for the Or Ein Sof to find more light and to actually accumulate more light?
You find more light?
Yeah, meaning to find more ways of if there's a certain amount of light within the Or Ein Sof, to find more of the Or Ein Sof, to almost get bigger.
The Or Ein Sof is infinite light.
Right.
So what's it trying? It's trying to find more light? I don't understand the question.
I'll say it in more of like a practical application. For a Jew, right, rather than going into the field and finding somebody, that's really far from Judaism and putting the film on them, for him to stay in a Beit Medrash and for him to learn more in order for him to accumulate more light within the Beit Medrash. Why is that? Why can't that be the avoda within itself?
It's it's a little bit of a different question. You're talking about a Jew sacrificing his time for another Jew.
Exactly. I'm saying that being the avoda. Yeah.
It's a slightly different thing that we're talking about, right? Because we're talking about like the Orient Sof agreeing to come into the dark place. But I guess you could say it's a similar thing. Let's say you're the king and you're going to go into the field, right? You're going to bring your light over there. It's a similar thing, right? Because you're able to find godliness, right? Which is the essence of God inside of this other Jew, hidden there, and bring it out. I mean, in general, like you said in the beginning, when you give, you get. I mean, the idea of spreading the light of Chassidus is really what makes it strong inside of you. This is a different topic, essentially,
right.
But I don't mind going into it if you want to for a second. But the idea is that especially when it comes to putting light into a vessel, which is essentially, in this case, you can put it into your own vessel, which means you can understand the information and like contain it. But what does it say? When you learn much from your teachers, you learn more from your friends, and from your students, you learn more than anybody, right? Why is that? How does that make sense? It's Divrei Chazal. Because when you put the information into another person, that means you have to, so to speak, contract yourself. Let's say the other person's obviously not on the level you are, right? Otherwise, why are you going to the street to find them? So you have to master the information in such a way that you can actually bring it down and cloak it into something outside of yourself. The mastery that you have to have on that is far greater than the mastery that you have to have just to hold it in your own head. And not only that, but if you go and try to explain to another person, and you realize that you can't do it properly, it's really a sign that you don't really have it in your own head. So here you could be spending all your days in the base mentors thinking that you're gaining all this wisdom. The second you try to give it to someone else, you can't, right? And therefore, what do you do all the time? You never really got the wisdom that you wanted to have in the first place. So it's actually a function of your own development, and a necessary function of your own development. Right? It says you're supposed to learn and teach. Why is teaching such an essential part of our learning process? Because you do not learn it properly yourself unless you go and teach it. And the lower of the person that you're teaching means that you have to get the concept into the most distilled form that's even going to fit into their mind. In which case, it means you have to completely master it in such a way that you can actually, distill it into a muscle, right? And which means you have to sort of wrap yourself entirely around it and own it in a completely different way. So this is essentially why there's something in it for you to do outreach, which is essential and necessary. But I know where you're coming from, so it's a kind of a different question, not totally connected with this mimer, but there's that. Amongst other reasons, to be honest with you, but essentially, the whole idea is that the lower you go, you reach the higher is the source, right? So if you're going to go out of yourself, you're actually reaching a higher source of life. Okay, fine. Did you have a question? So you had your hand up there? No. All right, fine. So what are we saying? That the Orient Sof has this aliyah from coming down to us. Let's go and finish the mind. So Os Ches. V'zeu ani l'dodi v'dodi li. Rosh Tevas Ela. We're going to start answering some of our questions we had before in the beginning of the Mimer. Excuse me. Which was, thanks. What do we say? Who remembers the original question of the Mimer? When we started this Mimer, we said there's a puzzling thing in the very statement, Ani V'dodi V'dodi Li. Does anyone remember what that was? Yes, no. Why is V'dodi Li in the word Elul when in the Mimer of the Alter Rebbe, he clearly says it refers to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, right? That's right. So this question arises based on the Alter Rebbe's depiction of what Ani V'dodi Li is. So based on that, V'dodi Li belongs in Rosh Hashanah. Why is it part of the word Elul? Exactly. So Ani V'dodi Li Rosh Tevas Elul Yesh Lomar. Now we can explain. The whole thing is going to come clear, hopefully. V'dodi Li Rosh Tevas Elul. That this Dodi Li and Elul Kai Be'ikr Ala Giloy Yigim Yisrach Mim Sheva Elul. Well, totally changed the entire conversation. We have been corrected. As it turns out, and he's even sort of saying something totally opposite of the Alter Rebbe, seemingly. Obviously, he'll put it all together again. But he's saying the V'dodi Li in Elul is nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah. It has to do with the 13 attributes of mercy that come down in Elul. In other words, just like we've been saying before, we had this whole conversation whether this thing of the king coming into the field could properly be called an arousal. We said, is it an empowerment or is it an arousal? You remember this whole conversation? And what did we wind up concluding there? We concluded that it's an arousal, believe it or not, in the end, right? Because we said, how can it not be? We said, first of all, the fact that the king is showing you these faces is, if it was just an empowerment, that has no place in the mashal, right? Because if it's just an empowerment, let the king come to the field, period. I'll go out to see him, and therefore I'm empowered by his presence in the field. But the fact that the mashal goes on and says he's accepting your tshuva and he's laughing at you and showing you all these faces, the faces of the king, is a revelation. So that means that in Elul, I'm going to not only just go and see the king in the field, I'm going to experience revelation. So it's a full-blown revelation of Hashem. That is an arousal. And then he went furthermore and said, if you think about it, even the very presence of the king in the field is already an arousal. Because come on, if the king is the mamash in the field, you're going to go, right? So the whole original premise of saying that this was just an empowerment, and why did we want to say that? Because we wanted to say that Elul is Ani V'dodi. And if it's Ani Ladodi, because I have to be doing the work, then Hashem can't be making me do the work, can he? So we tried to press ourselves into this explanation that the king in this month was merely an empowerment so that we can save the self-service of Ani Ladodi, but ultimately we said no, there's a full-blown revelation of the Or Ein Sof in this month. And now what he's saying is, that's what the Vadodi Li in the word Elul is, right? Ani Ladodi, Vadodi Li. Now you're going to have a question, which is, what should be your question?
And how am I going to be thankful if I'm being aroused?
How do we get the Ani Ladodi?
Yeah.
Right? We answered that. That's very good. That's not the question that I was thinking you were going to ask, but I'm glad you asked it. If what we just got through saying is that we were trying to preserve this notion of empowerment so that we would give you room to do the avoda. Remember we said, like, we don't want this idea that Hashem comes down the mountain and forces the mountain over our head in order to receive the Torah. We want rather more like a Purim story where we could do it ourselves. And therefore we tried to wiggle this muscle around in such a way that it would say that, but now we failed in that. It's a full-blown arousal. How do we find the Ani Ladodi? Who remembers? It's kind of the whole point of the mimer.
You have to choose to go to the field from the city.
You kind of, but then what did we just got through saying? That's what we thought. That was what we said. But then what did we get through saying? If the king is in the field, you're running over there to see the king. Imagine if someone said, like, even like a lesser person, right? Forget about the Lubavitcher Rebbe just came into Sfas, right? You get up and go. But what if they said even like, I don't know, some random speaker? It's like, oh, maybe I'll go. You know what I'm saying? So if the king is in your field, it's more than just an empowerment. You're gonna go. So again, you're being totally aroused to service. Where's the Ani Ladodi in this whole measure? We answered it, but we've had some disjointedness in this mimer.
Following the king to his palace afterwards.
No. Because you're already basically with the king at that point, right? So and we said that was definitely a mashal for Rosh Hashanah. That part was that you get to go into the palace of Rosh Hashanah because you've now befriended the king. Yeah?
God and Jews are essentially one, so this goes on the
I'm sorry?
God and Jews are essentially one, so this goes on the other.
Very good, very good. Let me spell that out a little bit. What the arousal really makes you realize is that all you want is God, right? In other words, it shows you yourself. Because the idea is that when you finally get to this sort of laughing phase, why is he laughing? Because he has an intrinsic desire for you, which has nothing to do with your mission, nothing to do with your tshuva. He just loves you. And this itself, that type of arousal where he loves you for no reason, it makes you realize that you love him for no reason. That you have an intrinsic desire for Hashem, and even if you wouldn't be aroused, you're just all in, you're all for him. So the arousal from above, it actually reminds you of the true nature of who you are, and that's what it means, Ani Ladodi. You find your Ani. Okay, it came from a whole bunch of like fireworks and so forth, but at the end of the day, you actually realize Ani. So therefore, you can Ani Ladodi all day long because you realize all I want is Hashem and nothing else. Okay, he sort of spurred you into that experience, but he did. And when you get to the end of that experience, you realize that it's you that wants Hashem. So that's how we explained it. So now we're saying that the Vadodi Li in Elul is quite simply what it sounds like the whole time. We don't have to make any crazy perushim. It's the revelation of God in Elul, which is the king coming to the field and laughing at you and showing you these faces. But now there's another question, which would be
The order.
the order. Very good. That it should say Vadodi Li Ani Ladodi, right? Because what happens first? First, Hashem reveals himself to you. Very good, Yoshua. First, did you read ahead?
Right now.
Very good. Even if you read ahead, that's even better. So the Dodi comes first, we're saying, right? Hashem totally arouses you, and then you find yourself. So now we have another second question: why is it out of order? Yeah. Yes. Vanilo, yes, but that's not Elul. It doesn't spell Elul, right? Okay, fine. So let's take a look. We got to get through this. I was worried we're not gonna have enough material. And I'm blabbering away. I'm hoping we're gonna finish now. Okay, so going like this. This Vadodi Li in this pasuk is in fact the 13 attributes of mercy, the king that comes to the field and shines in Elul. You understand the question? This it says first, right? Ani Vedodi, and then Vedodi li, right? Is the problem now? What's going on with this order? Even though the revelation of the Orient Sof is actually the empowerment and even the arousal of the Ani Ladodi, so the orders out. It's because in a deeper way, Ani Ladodi, Avodas Adam, the Ani Ladodi part, which comes first in the verse but last in B, so right? Which is your avoda, hu lamayla mivadodi li, gila milamayla. In other words, what the order of the verse is not the order of the chronology of the timing. The order of the verse is the order of importance, right? So when it says ani ladodi first, it's not saying that happens first. It's saying that's on a whole higher level. The level called ani ladodi, which is what? The Jew's essence, which is the essence of God, and therefore is far superior to any revelations of God. That's why Ani Ladodi comes first in the pasuk, because it's ordering the pasuk in order of importance, not in order of what happens in the process. You got it? It's L'mayla Mevedodi Gilim L'mayla, because it's higher than a revelation from above, as we've been saying. Shakavan about Gilu de Yugim Yusarachamim. The whole purpose and intention behind these 13 attributes of mercy, they're there in order to arouse man's service. In other words, the very fact that they come first in order to arouse man's service shows that man's service is the purpose of them, right? So Ani Vedodi comes first because the whole reason that there's a Vedodi is to get to Ani Vedodi. It's actually very rational. And furthermore, as we said, there's an elevation to the 13 attributes of mercy. So Ani Ladodi creates a higher version of Vadodi as well, because they suddenly get their purpose by coming and tickling your essence. What is exactly the elevation that happens to the 13 attributes of mercy? Look in the mashal. There's two distinct examples. There's the Ilo Shinaisa Bagilim Lamaila, Al Yidei Yudridas Lamata, Vichdei La'oris Adam, right? There, first and foremost, is the elevation that happens from this revelation coming out and descending down below in order to arouse you. Right? We already said the very fact that the Orient Sof comes to you is already an aliyah for it, because it shows it gives the Orient Sof a purpose. And then there's the Eloi Shanais Aidei orders Tshuva Adam B'Kol. And then there's a second level of revelation, which we're going to see actually itself is divided into two. So all in all, there's going to be 3 stages of elevation in the Orient Sof. The first one is the very fact that it comes to the field. The second one is its change, so to speak, its elevation and aliyah over the fact that the Jewish people do tshuva in actuality due to the fact that it came down to the field. Notice, this very coming to the field is already giving it purpose. The fact that it then succeeds in its effort to make a Jew do tshuva, that gives it a second level of elevation. And in that it made a Jew do tshuva, and it was effective, it has two levels. What are the 2 levels? We're going to see these are the 2 faces, right? First of all, is the elevation that happens due to the pleasure above in man's service, right? So the first thing that the Orient, the very presence of the king in the field is already a win. Then what happens when you come to see the king in the field, which means you've changed yourself because it came down to you? He's makabel the Seder Panim Yafos. He receives with this Panim Yafos. The Panim Yafos is second level of elevation. And what is it? Where do you see the elevation? Because the king suddenly is showing his face. The face is like a metaphor for Gilui. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha. He reveals his countenance to you. And what is he so happy about in the first stage of the mashal? He's happy about the fact that you did tshuva. He's happy about the fact that you are now suddenly going and changing your behaviors and going and bringing your will and revealing that you want Torah mitzvahs and that you want to return, get out of the desert. So that gladdens the king, i.e., it bumps up the Or Ein Sof an extra second notch now. And then the third level is that the king has a second level smile, which is that he reveals his joy in the Jews themselves, right? Like as we said before, the Or Ein Sof is not happy over the fact that the Jew is doing tshuva merely. The fact that the Jew has done tshuva makes the king just reveal this extra measure of happiness in what? Our mere existence. That it's an irrational level of love, that even if we didn't do tshuva, Hashem just has an intrinsic love for the Jewish people. And therefore he shows us this love, which is a laughing face, which is a complete level of elevation for the Or Ein Sof. Because now the Or Ein Sof, think about it, what's the Or Ein Sof experiencing right now at that third level? It's experiencing mamash what the Atzmus experiences. The Atzmus is what loves Hashem intrinsically, because we are his children. We are him. A piece of the Atzmus inside of us. So just like you love your son, even if he doesn't behave properly because he's just you, there's an intrinsic love there. The Or Ein Sof doesn't usually have a taste of that, because the Or Ein Sof is beaming out of the Atzmus. It's trying to reveal the Atzmus, but it's not one with the Atzmus exactly in that way. When it shows itself to the Jew, and all of a sudden it's revealing a certain reality that the Jew is intrinsically important, it starts to smile. It starts to laugh even. What's this laughing of the Atzmus? Is because it gets a taste of what Hashem has, an intrinsic love for God. Where is that intrinsic love for God taking place? In Hashem's Atzmus, which means the Or Ein Sof has an elevation to experience the Atzmus. By coming down, right, it has an ultimate aliyah of actually being able to truly reveal the Atzmus, which is an experience of an intrinsic love for the Jew, which it only gets by doing this job. It so to speak, tastes that pleasure that the Atzmus has.
This is the only time that happened.
It happens to everybody in life, right? But theoretically, this is a constant state of affairs. But we see that this whole muscle of the
generally, you said the Or Ein Sof doesn't experience this.
Unless it's coming out and making a Jew do tshuva, right? But in
It
Elul,
can happen all the time, say? Not just now.
I'm saying that it's all the levels of that we read. Like you're going to read it's Kislev. There's certain things that come out, and Pesach and Sukkot. They all. So there's a kind of a famous joke that even the Rebbe says in all seriousness in the Maimarim, is that every time you get to a new holiday, you realize this is the greatest holiday there is. How is the next holiday greater than the previous one? We just said that one was the greatest. So he basically explains there's something called the gates, right? When you're in a particular time and place, you have to dial into that gate in order to experience the essence of Hashem, which is found there. Because the essence of Hashem truly is found everywhere and every time and at all places. The question is, what's the keys that unlock it? So the avoda of Elul has its own unique properties. If you're going to try to do the avoda of Elul in Pesach time, you're not going to get in, because then you're going to have to find the same levels of Hashem, but through the keys of Pesach and the avoda of Pesach. So in other words, these levels are available, but through different means and through different measures at different times, right? So fine. So going on. So the third level of this elevation of the light is that it shows this face of the Tainug Atzmi Shabisrael Atzman, the pure essential pleasure of the Jews themselves. And where is this pleasure coming from? The Shorsh of the Shamos, because the source of the souls, who Lamayla Shorsh the Torah mitzvahs. It actually precedes Torah mitzvahs, right? The fact that Hashem has a will for Torah mitzvahs is very nice, but who's the one having the will? There's a level inside of God which precedes his Torah mitzvahs, and that's where the Jews are. God mitzvahs tshuva, even the source of the Jewish people, even not only higher than the mitzvahs in general, it's higher than the mitzvah of tshuva, which is the highest of all mitzvahs. And therefore, the light suddenly has these panim sochakos, these laughing faces. And, as I just mentioned, Yesh Lomar, Kevan Shis Oros HaTshuva Da'adam. Since this arousal of tshuva that happens from man, Shal Yedahu Agilu the panim yafos the panim sochos, which then causes these two levels of the faces, primarily the face of the laughing face, which is completely beyond any reason. Since this is caused by the Jew doing tshuva, And that tshuva is caused by the dodili, by the revelation of light coming out, which is the 13 attributes of mercy of Elu. Therefore, the effect that Ani Ladodi has on Vidodili, in other words, the effect of the Jew on the light, is that the light, the revelation of Vidodili, it has these elevations of laughing and smiling and laughing. It was the light on itself. When it came down to the field, it wasn't smiling and laughing. Right? So the very time fact that it comes down already in Aliyah, because it realizes its purpose. But now that it goes up to these levels, it suddenly has an Aliyah. Where does the light go? It experiences the essence itself. And what is this? This is a very wondrous thing. Normally, what we say is that no matter how great the light, even the Or Ein Sof, it really does not shine the essence mamish, because there's a basic, fundamental difference between essence and revelation. Essence is that which can never be known, right? It's so high, it's essential, it can never be known. The revelations are an attempt to reveal it, but why is the attempt to reveal it an Or Ein Sof that goes on forever? Because no matter how much light you're going to reveal, it never really gets to it. So even though the Or Ein Sof is famously a revelation of the Ein Sof, it's really not a revelation of the Ein Sof. It's merely a ray that comes out, like the sunlight. It's showing you there's a sun, but is the sunlight in any way comparable to the actual ball of the sun? It says actually that it's more yesh mi'ayin, the Or Ein Sof from the essence, than mamish the creation itself. Just like we have no idea of what our source is down here in physical bodies, and we have no perception of really where it is, and we're just completely distinct from it. Even more so is the Or Ein Sof from the essence of Hashem. As crazy as that sounds, since the purpose of it is to be a revelation of God. If God is truly beyond revelation, how can you reveal it? And so the Or Ein Sof, no matter how grand of a light it is, it's always really a huge step down from the actual Atzmus. The Chiddush here is that it begins to smile and laugh. So the Or Ein Sof, how does it do that? Because of the effect of the Atzmus upon it, because it was helping us to do tshuva, and therefore it revealed the essence. It has an elevation. Its elevation is that it actually gets the ability to truly reveal the essence. In other words, that the Or goes to the level where it's actually able to reveal the essence of Hashem, and it's not a huge step down. That is a messianic type of reality. When the essence does not. Remember, we had a whole beginning of this class talking about the two different ways that the essence reveals itself. We called them light and vessel, if you recall. Why was there a need for vessel? Right? Because really, if you want to see the Or Ein Sof, it'll show, the Ein Sof, it'll show itself to you, but you're not going to like it, because it's going to come out looking like a vessel, which shows you nothing of God. The essence is lodged in there, but just like the essence can't be seen, so too this vessel can't be seen. Or, I'll do you another one. The Or Ein Sof can show you light and revelation, but then what's the drawback there? You're not really seeing the essence. Because if you want to see the essence, there's no light and revelation. You wind up in this dichotomy, right? And that's why, in fact, Hashem shows us lights and vessels, because He wants to show us simultaneously both. There's such a thing called revelation, and there's such a thing called essence. But in this end of this story, when the Or Ein Sof starts to giggle, right? It's a symbol that the essence itself, as is, what's normally lost in the Kli, that very same level of the pure essence can also shine, because Hashem can do anything. It's not a necessity that the essence of God cannot show itself, that it has to step down in order to shine. So it actually shines the very essence itself, and that is what we mean when we say there's an aliyah to the Or Ein Sof. It's very interesting, but I'm feeling like you guys have no idea what I'm talking about.
Why is there a light if it's not even close to portraying what the Ein Sof actually is?
Because, in other words, it begins to reveal everything that possibly can be seen. But since the core of it is inexhaustible in its essence, right? It really can never be seen. But show me something, right? So it's imagine there's sort of some essential wealth deposit, right? You say, I'm so wealthy that you'll never understand. I have more money than the whole world can produce. You say, but let me see a little bit. So I'll show you $700 billion. You're like, wow, you get some revelation of it, right? The reality is whatever I showed you fails entirely to truly reveal the essence itself, because the essence is something which by definition is beyond revelation, but show me something, right? And in this capacity, when Hashem shows you something, He literally shows you infinite light. And even infinite light does not begin to actually express God. Except when does it? When the light starts to smile and then laugh. What causes that? By it coming down to the field and making you do true, because it reveals the essence inside of you, and it was functionally able to be responsible for revealing the essence. It gets like a gift, right? And it gets to actually show the essence. That thing we just said, where it's impossible to reveal the essence. Who said God can do whatever He wants? Even though like the essence is beyond revelation, so He'll make it also reveal. So this is what happens to the Orient Sof, and that's why it says Ani Ladodi Vadodi Li in that order. Even though the reality is that Dodi Li comes to you first and reveals your Ani, but excuse me, let's talk about what's really going on here. The Ani Ladodi reveals a whole new level of Vadodi Li, to the point that it actually brings it to the level of Ani Ladodi. It brings it to the level of the essence. This is the idea. L'chein pu'o the Ani Ladodi v'Vadodi Li, the effect of Ani Ladodi on Dodi Li, who shagam agilu the Vadodi Li, that the Dodi Li raises up to the level of Panim Yafos and Panim Sochos. And in conclusion, Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will, Sha'adei Ma'aseinu V'Avodoseinu, through our deeds and our actions and our avoda, Ubifrat Adei Avoda Dechodesh Elul, particularly the avoda of Elul, needs Kebakaru Mamash Legula Asida, we should soon merit the ultimate redemption. Sha'azia Misis in the Mar Panim Sochos. Then we will have the true level of what's called shining the laughing faces. In other words, this is sort of like a preface to the Geula. As I said, if this actually happened in full, that is what you call Geula, that the essence of Hashem is actually shining. There's no more need for him to conceal it into these vessels which don't really show it, but kind of have it. When all that will end, it will actually reveal that the Gashmias itself is the essence of God shining full. As it's said in many places, there's some kind of a great feast that Hashem is going to make for the tzaddikim in the future, right? The viyasim, the shurabor, as it's known, the fish and the ox, which ultimately it'll be openly revealed that the whole war of good and evil in this world, it's only in order to reveal this laughing and this joy. In other words, where's he going with this all of a sudden? That he's saying that the ultimate level of Mashiach is laughter, right? Because when the laughter is a symbol that the Orient Sof is now revealing the actual essence. And so why is that? Where's the laughter going to come from? He kind of like shifts to a different concept over here in the last line. But the notion is that there's this concept of what's called Yitzchak, right? The father of the future. When it all comes down to it, Yitzchak is going to be the ultimate father, right? And his name means laughter, and it means he will laugh, which means God will laugh in the end of days. And that's what the Maimer ends. Az Yemal Yischok Pinu. And then his mouth will be filled with laughter. What is this laughter about? So this is what we talk about kind of all the time, with this business of the talking bird. Remember the talking bird? Right, that you take a bird and you teach it to talk. Even a king who has all the riches in the world, he's going to get a good laugh out of that. It's a chiddush for him. It's something he doesn't have. So this whole business, Hashem created evil, and he puts a Jew in exile, and he puts the vessels, and he hides the essence inside these vessels. So we have to wrench it out with doing tshuva, and like the whole war of good and evil is essentially to create talking birds. It's to create a situation where it's such a chiddush that you're going to bring a realization that this bird can talk. In other words, that these lower realms can also serve Hashem. That it basically cracks Hashem up. It's the laughing face of the Orient Sof, and that's essentially the symbol of the final purpose of everything. Then finally Hashem will laugh. When we it's going to all be kind of like a joke to Hashem, like a chiddush that like kind of just makes him chuckle, and that chuckling of God is the experience that all the universe will have in the end of days. This is what it's all about, to bring Hashem this unique gift. And all this should be immediately. Yalla, there was a run. A lot going on there. We did perfect timing at least. I didn't see that coming.
Rebbe du, de Gevers zijn du, jeder du, oké. Laat me verbrengen. Verbringen mit de Gevre, verbringen mit de Rebbe. Avade in Avade is der Ei bist du.